It's lights out on the pit wall. Welcome to our Fantasy Formula One podcast. I'm your host, Jeanmark, and joining me are my handsome knights in shining racing armor, my bro, Dominick, and my father, David. This is our Bahrain GP reaction. So let's begin with the race results. Starting on pole position was Verstappen. And of course, Hamilton squeaked that out. We'll get to that later. Our biggest loser is Gasly, sliding out 12 positions. Alonso sliding down 10 positions. Perez, it says that he went up 6 positions, but at the beginning of the race, he actually started from the pit wall. What do you guys think about the mayhem that was happening with that second Red Bull seat at the beginning of the race?
I'm definitely a little surprised that they were having issues even before the race started. That's never a good sign. But he definitely handled it very well. Starting from the pit wall, he drove really well, made the most of the opportunities he, afforded. And I'd say overall, he did much better than even I could have expected.
Oh, so you thought he was going to be lower?
Well, so it's the first race, and there was always the question as to is it the second driver that's the problem, or is it the car? Always been a question for Red Bull. There's been a lot of struggle for the second driver at Red Bull, and so going in and not knowing for sure, I was a little worried about that too. It was like, is it him? Is it the car? But he really made it look a lot easier than maybe some other drivers in the past.
That's a good point, because if I remember correctly, during qualifying, they actually put him out on medium tires for the second Q2. And the race rules indicate that whatever tires you have in Q2 is what you have to have for the beginning of the race. Problem is you can't race as fast, and so that's why he got knocked out and wasn't able to get into Q3. So for him to be able to drive back, like you said, also from the pit lane because his car is turned off on him, that was great. I think as long as he can qualify high enough, he's going to start actually impacting the Mercedes. We'll talk about it later, but their strategy, they really had to try hard because the Red Bull was pushing them. And if they had 2 of them, they'd really be able to keep them from doing anything they wanted.
I was impressed with the way he drove. I believe he won the last race of last year, and I was happy when he joined the Red Bull team.
Oh yeah, the second to last race, but yeah.
So I was happy to see how he managed to go through the field and go up into top 5. So I was happy.
So let's take it beat for beat through the race, and we'll react as we go. First, we have Red Bull dealing with their engine problems, but as the race began, you had some chaos where Gasly, he qualified 5th, but he had a front wing issue as he clipped one of the McLaren cars, and that was a shame because, bro, he was on your pick, and he got messed up.
It was unfortunate. He was definitely looking really good, but that's how the beginning of races go. Sometimes stuff like that happens. It's the first race of the year. Mistakes are going to be made. I'm looking forward to seeing better driving from him and everybody as time progresses.
You bring up a good point. I hadn't brought this up before, but I'm thinking that Tsunoda may be a better option than Gasly, even if he doesn't qualify as head of Gasly. And the reason why is, if you think back last season, Gasly makes a lot of first lap contact. The race he actually won, he pipped Albon, and they made tire contact down in the first corner. If that didn't go his way, he would have been out that first lap. And so then the very next race, he got knocked out in the first lap with a big accident as well. And now we're seeing this. And so he drives on the edge, but like you said, if he's getting into these car battles and he starts damaging his car, he's going to lose positions. And anytime you lose positions, you're going to lose fantasy points. So he might be somebody that, like you said, if he doesn't start calming down and driving carefully, he's actually going to be a detriment over the course of a season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little too early to say that Tsunoda is a better pick because, it's only been one race. But that is still a good point. If you don't drive carefully, you're going to make bad errors that will end up dropping you 12, 13 places. And that's bad for you as a driver, but also for anybody that picked you for fantasy. That is unfortunate. But like I said, it's the first race of the season. I'm sure it'll get better as time goes on.
Also, we see that there was two drivers that were really close together. The Alfa Romeo drivers, Kimi Räikkönen was stuck behind Giovinazzi, and he was getting on the radio saying, "I'm faster than him, let me pass." Well, he said it differently, but what did you guys think? Do you think that he actually was faster? Do you think it was right for team orders to try to get these drivers swapped?
He was only, one place ahead of him at the end of the race.
Yeah.
So even though he might have taken over, he didn't really go that much higher.
That's true. He didn't go much higher, but he did gain 3 positions for the race. So he was able to pass some people. But yeah, for me, he was on my team for the pick. So Giovinazzi got barely any points because, like you guys were pointing out, he couldn't go anywhere. He wasn't gaining any positions. And then, of course, Raikkonen passed him. So the one position he could have gained and gotten, I think, 2 points for, right? That's actually the big problem is you have these two drivers in the same car, but you have to be 2 seconds faster than the car in front of you to pass them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't do that if you're in the exact same machinery, and that's why they often complain on the radio for the team to let them pass. That probably won't be the only inter-team battle that we're going to have. But what do you guys think about Red Bull? They kept Verstappen out when the undercut proved to be quite powerful. They kept him out perhaps maybe a little too long, but I guess they felt like if they could have longer stints and the tires would be softer so they could come back and attack. But a slow pit stop ended up costing Verstappen crucial time. What do you guys think about Red Bull's strategy versus Mercedes' undercut?
I mean, it did look like it was going to work. The entire plan, it almost worked out at the very end. We got that very close race. Verstappen actually was literally just inches away from passing him before his tires went off the side of the track. But what they had, I think they did about as good as they could have. It was a 2v1 with Bottas and Hamilton. And so Verstappen just had to do the best he could. It was close and he almost got it. And I think, especially with the 2.9 on that pit stop, Red Bulls are very infamous for having very short pit stops. So a 2.9 is huge. That was just a slight error, right? If they had that faster pit stop, the entire race could have been different. So I don't know if that was so much strategy. I think they just did the best with what they had, and it just didn't work out.
So I was reflecting on it, and there's two things. I think that Verstappen could have tried to pass a different place and use DRS. And when he gave back his position, he could have done it at a different position so that Hamilton didn't have DRS. And he wouldn't have gotten left so much in the dust and trying to catch up a second time.
Like let him pass him like in a braking zone.
Right. So that's my thought.
True. Well, the other thing that happened is after Hamilton passed him again, he started harvesting energy. And that's why Verstappen could never get close again, is because he was able to use his boost to keep out in front on those DRS areas. So yeah, it seems like he had the pace to pass him at that moment. But like you guys said, those things kind of worked against him. There's this infamous corner 4, and that's where Verstappen ended up passing Hamilton. And the Red Bull traditionally is better cornering, so that's why he tried to fight him around the corners. And Hamilton, wouldn't say he pushed him wide, but he took the racing line. And he went over the edge. And according to the sporting regulations, you cannot get a lasting advantage by going off the track. But the race track, or the FIA's directive for racing regularly when you're not trying to pass someone, you are allowed to go off on turn 4. And Hamilton did that 29 times over the course of the race. And then Verstappen, according to team radio, he wasn't doing it. So one could argue Hamilton was getting a lasting advantage over the course of a race. You weren't allowed to go over turn 4 during qualifying or testing, or your lap time would be deleted. So they should just be across the board, just like keep it simple. Like if you can't go over a corner in qualifying and testing, you shouldn't be able to go over it during a race. And if you go over 3 times, they show you the black flag, they give you a time penalty because Hamilton or anybody is exploiting the corner. If they're going over it that many times, there's 56 laps. At least every other lap he was going over that corner. And when we mean going over the corner, that meant all 4 tires left the corner. Because if Verstappen had even kept 2 of his tires on the track, then he would have been able to keep his position when he passed Hamilton.
That might have helped save his tires too if he didn't have to corner that corner as hard.
Exactly. That's why people would go wide there. The FIA will make an adjustment there because it's difficult enough to pass people as it is. And that's the other thing that killed Verstappen's tires is because he was in what's called the dirty air behind the car. So his tires were getting messed up and his aerodynamics was getting thrown off. And he had to do that for multiple laps. And so he couldn't get within that 1 second DRS again because of the energy harvesting and all that. So hopefully next season, where you can actually follow each other closer, that's going to alleviate a lot of that problem because who's actually 2 seconds faster than Hamilton? You know what I mean? Hamilton was 1.7 seconds behind Verstappen like the entire race until the first round of pit stops. And then when Verstappen tries to catch him, Hamilton is able to keep out in front the whole time and make it quite difficult to catch him. In my opinion, it is not good watching Formula One when Hamilton's in the front. He just pulls away and he dominates and he manages his tires. You need someone else in front of Hamilton. Hamilton's a good chaser, but Hamilton didn't pass Verstappen during the race. And that's why he won, because he was able to do a pit stop strategy. We want actual racing wheel to wheel on the track. So there has to be a way to force Hamilton to pass Verstappen, because we know he wasn't going to do that, right? He didn't want to get in the dirty air. He didn't want to try to push. He just wanted to manage his tires.
I mean, you have to really ask if having your 4 tires off during qualifying and practice gets your time deleted. Why can somebody go over 20 plus times in a race? And they say there wasn't anybody else around. So it's not like he was getting an advantage against somebody else. But I mean, that little bit of an advantage that you can get from not following the track to the letter, it adds up 29 times. That's a lot. Verstappen got unlucky. It happened to him that he had to give the place back. But I mean, it got to the point where the Red Bull team over the radio was like, hey, nobody's making a fuss about this corner, so go ahead and just use it. It seemed kind of weird that you would say something like that over the radio so blatantly, unless maybe this was some kind of way to let people know that, hey, we're kind of like protesting it without being able to protest it like directly. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't just straight out call them out. We kind of make like a deal out of this over the radio where people can hear it, then people start talking.
It's interesting because right after that radio broadcast, Mercedes came over the radio and told Lewis that he needed to stop going over that corner to him. And he says, but I thought there was no track limits. And then the FIA, Michael Massey, after the race said, no, there were no infringements. Red Bull was trying to protest over the radio, and then Mercedes was trying to make it sound like, oh, Hamilton's going to stop going over that corner right when Verstappen's going to try to pass him, so that it seemed like, you know what I mean? It's like they were playing a game over the radio, just doesn't make it seem like it was fair.
You know, once or twice, you know, it's a mistake, right? 20 plus times, you have to start asking, like what's the point of having the track there if you're not going to stay on it?
Right? Each time he did that, he would have gained at least a second over the course of a whole race. Other tracks like Monza, for example, if you go over the edge on some of those corners, you go in the gravel. And that corner doesn't have gravel. And so that's why, like you said, people can kind of get away with it. But if they had something that would penalize you, drivers wouldn't be doing it, right?
I mean, it is what it is, though.
It is what it is. Let's continue on with our story. Here is a historical note. Hamilton passes Michael Schumacher for most leading laps, 5,112, which was the current record. So how do you guys feel about Hamilton leading pretty much all the time?
Well, you know, it's what he does. So, I mean, it's not really much of a surprise that he would get the record. The Mercedes are good at being in front and staying in front. I congratulate him. After all these years, it's nice to see that their records can still be broken.
Yeah, that's something that you have goals or records so other people can work towards breaking them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a goal that they have. And so if you didn't have records, then you wouldn't strive to do better than that last person.
I mean, but it's true. There, you know, it's something tangible you can work towards.
Well, it's the classic records are meant to be broken.
Mm-hmm.
So going on to a wreck that could have brought out a safety car and it would have changed the entire complexion of the race. But Ocon and Vettel collide.
So I was just reflecting on Vettel's history. Last year with Ferrari, he started not keeping up with Leclerc, and I thought, maybe sliding and slipping a little. This race hasn't engendered any confidence that he's turning it around.
Well, we do want to put some things in perspective. Well, we haven't talked about him yet, so let's talk about it now. Mazepin, or as the internet has dubbed him, Mazaspin. First corner, first lap, he doesn't touch anyone. He spins off the track. He crashes. Well, during qualifying, something similar happened. He tried to go out in front of everybody. He jumps Q. He spins off the track, which brings out double yellow flags. Vettel and some of the other people got knocked out in Q3 because they could not set faster times. Vettel actually got penalized 5 grid spots because apparently he didn't slow down enough for the double yellow. So he started from 20th on the grid. Now he's stuck behind all these people. He couldn't show his true pace. The other thing is the regulations have changed so that cars with lower rake, the angle of the car, are now being affected more by wind. He's also suffering from that because he's got a car that's not as stable in the rear. And that's the thing he kept complaining about last year in the Ferrari. It has an unstable rear. I can't drive it. He likes to be able to plant the rear. It's going to be a tough battle for him to push forward or to improve. Hopefully they'll get tracks where he's able to be more confident. But I do not think Aston Martin's going to be as strong as they thought they were because the regulations hit them pretty hard. Mercedes was able to recover it, but not them.
I think once he gets more settled in, probably look better down the stretch.
I was reflecting that you were talking about Mazepin spun out. I believe that the other Haas also did the same thing. I'm wondering if it had something to do with the car and if that was just a little too sensitive. Both of them got more boost than they thought they were going to get or something.
Yeah, they throttled, both Schumacher and Mazepin throttled a little bit too much. Yeah, last year Grosjean had a lot of problems with the Haas, and they're not really making big changes this season. So like you said, if you throttle it a little too much, that car will spin out. And yeah, they're going to have to deal with that. But, you know, the rookies at the Haas team, they're just going to have to be fine this season and then wait for the regulation changes because Haas is putting all their tokens, their development tokens and money into next season to try to get a better car. Before we finish this segment and go to the fantasy points part of this podcast, we're going to do our hero and zero of the day. So we'll start off with you, bro. Who is your hero of the day?
Well, I mean, I feel like the obvious choice would be Perez. He obviously did very good. But actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with Norris.
Ooh,
I think mine. Yeah, he did very well, starting in 7th, getting all the way up to, I believe it was 4th. We had some questions about McLaren and what it was going to look like, and I think they did a really good job, but Norris really just drove very well this week.
What about you, Dad? Who's your hero of the day?
It was Norris also. I was happy to see a McLaren up in the top 5. The fact that he stayed ahead of Perez, who's a Red Bull, I thought that was pretty impressive.
And because I was going to pick Norris as well, I guess we're 3 for 3. Our hero of the day is Norris. Now for our zero of the day.
I have to go ahead and go with Mazepin. I'm sorry. When your first race gives you a nickname, that's not good. That's just not a great start. Tough luck, Mazepin. It's just the first race. It'll get better.
Yeah, that was my pick too. And we'll see if he keeps that nickname the whole year.
Well, I was going to say Gasly. You qualified 5th. And to end up DNFing by the end of the race, that's got to be a heartbreak because the Honda engine for the Red Bulls was pretty strong. So if Gasly was able to keep his place, he could have eked up to 4th or even maybe, I don't think he would have got 3rd. But
you don't think he could have gotten Bottas?
It depends, but Bottas was able to quickly pass Perez. Perez had like older tires at the time, but like the Mercedes can pretty much pass whoever they want. So I don't know.
That's true.
I don't know if he would have been able to hold him back. Yeah, it's a heartbreak whenever you qualify really good and then you get knocked out because of a first lap incident. Let us transition over to our DRD League. For those of you tuning in or listening for the first time, we have a driver rotation draft system. No money, all team, your strategy. This is designed in such a way so that we're able to allow for more close scoring as the season progresses. Our first 3 races of the season are called battle races. They are like a preseason of sorts so that we can figure out our drivers before we get all the averages and all the data. And here we have our first battle race where each of us would pick 3 drivers and then we would slot them 1, 2, and 3. And then all the drivers in slot 1 get compared, all the drivers in slot 2 get compared, and all the drivers in slot 3 get compared. And you're allowed to turbo one of those 3 drivers. As we see here in the battle race, Dad won slot 1 with Norris, getting 29 points. He was up against Giovinazzi, who scored 5, and Stroll, who got 11. Then in slot 2, Dad also won it. He got 40 points because he turboed Leclerc. Congratulations. Then we had him up against Ricciardo, who got 15 points, and Vettel, who got 12. And then in the third slot, of course, he couldn't win it because Alonso DNF'd and ended up with no points. Gasly, bro had him turboed, but he got 4. And then I had turboed Yuki Tsunoda, and he got me 32 points. So Dad gets 2 battle race points, and I get 1 battle race point. And whoever ends up with the most battle race points over the course of 3 races will be able to pick their original draft position for the regular season. What are your guys' thoughts about how your team did? We'll start off with you, bro.
I'm going to just say that I didn't do as good as I thought I was. Ricardo actually did pretty okay for me. Gasly would have probably scored me a considerably higher amount of points. Things had gone my way. Things had gone his way. Would I have gotten the point against Tsunoda? I'm not sure. I think I probably would have, but that's not how it went.
What about you, Dad? With the winning formula, how did that feel?
I was very fortunate. I went with Norris, that I thought was a pretty good, steady driver, and I went with Leclerc, who is aggressive and sometimes doesn't do quite as well as he might, because he may make a little poor decision, and that's why I turboed him. But he did well for me. And then Alonso, he kind of let me down, but I'm sure he felt bad himself, so I'll give him a break on that.
I put all my eggs in the basket on the rookie, and he paid off because that's how I got points. Without turboing him, I could have still won it, but you wouldn't know. And I couldn't have won any of the other 2 if I had turboed. So he ended up being the best points and the best chance. So we're going to go over to the mighty Google Sheet. And there we have it. That's how the order shaked up. And going over to our races page, we'll see that the score has been set. Dad's got his 2 battle race points. He's in the lead. I've got 1. Bro's got 0. But this is why we take the American style of fantasy football. You can score as many points as you want, but it only gives you a championship point or maybe 2. That way everything stays close together. Because what we see, or what we found in Fantasy Formula 1 online, once you get like 100-something points ahead, you're never going to catch up, right? That's how you were feeling, Dad. Like you wanted to join the Pitwall League, for example, and you almost feel like it's not worth it because you're like, 150 points down?
Yeah, the lowest score is 137. So we'll probably even be able to catch up on that.
And there you have it. Thank you for joining us for our Pitwall Fantasy Formula 1 podcast. Thank you, bro, for joining us, Dominic, and thank you, Dr. Kessler, David, for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you on the pit wall.
Oh,